Welcome to another edition of the O'Brien Brothers Show. We're recording this on Wednesday, June 15th, heading into Thursday's Game 6 of the NBA Finals. Last time we had a podcast, just finished up Game 2, and the Warriors were up 2-0, looking great. The series has taken a much different complexion now. And
yeah, it has.
we enter Game 6 with the Warriors up 3-2, but the Cavs are charging hard after winning Game 5, and this series looks a little bit different than last year's. We don't want to waste any time. We don't want to spend a long time recapping what we just saw in Games 3, 4, and 5. We want to do more looking ahead to Game 6 and talking about Game 5 entering Game 6. But really quick, Chris, what's your biggest takeaway from Game 5 and overall from the past 2-3 games?
Well, I guess it's always interesting to see how the different press conferences fall out after the games and who says what. So after Game 5, of course, Draymond is missing. And that's the biggest story, and I think that's probably my biggest takeaway too. But in the press conference afterwards, Steph and Clay both said that wasn't the reason they lost Game 5. It wasn't because of Draymond's absence. And initially when I saw that, I was like, well, come on, give your buddy some credit. Give him some credit. But obviously, it makes sense as being Steph and being Clay, they want to know themselves that they could beat the Cavs without Draymond. So, of course, Draymond comes out today and says, if I was there in Game 5, we would have won. And personally, I think he's right. I think that was the difference in Game 5. Granted, Kyrie and LeBron had amazing games. They both scored over 40 points. But I think the difference in the game was Draymond. The Warriors didn't have that extra facet to their offense to give it that extra push so they could beat the Cavs. Honestly, in that game, the final score is 112-97. The Warriors didn't even break 100. And I think that's the reason they lose Game 5. I think it's because Draymond's not there.
Well, I think Draymond is obviously a huge part of the reason that the Warriors lost. My biggest takeaway, other than the fact that, the Warriors really look like they missed Draymond, my biggest takeaway from the game was, that the Cavaliers stars vastly outplayed the Warriors stars. Well, not vastly, but the Cavaliers stars outplayed the Warriors stars. Yeah. And then B, I was disappointed in the Warriors defense on a few occasions. Obviously, you talked about them not crossing 100 points. I think that's in part due to their defense, in part due to their offensive execution. I was disappointed with their defense in transition a few times. And I'm not necessarily talking about giving up layups, although they did give up a couple layups to LeBron. Yeah. Charging through the paint. But I'm talking about giving up three-pointers in transition or semi-transition. When the Cavs would bring the ball down, they would swing the ball a couple times, LeBron would jab toward the paint, and all of a sudden they would lose Kyrie, trailing as a trailer or as someone kind of flaring out to the wing or flaring up to the top of the key. And give Kyrie all the credit in the world because he was on fire. And he was making some tough shots, too. He was making some contested shots.
Yeah.
But I think the Warriors could have defended him better on a couple of occasions. Andre Iguodala comes to mind on one occasion. And I'm not trying to throw him under the bus or anything.
No, because he's a great defender in general.
Yeah.
Iguodala.
And Klay Thompson on a couple of occasions just got completely lost. And that guy like Kyrie will burn you more often than not. And that was my biggest takeaway.
I think as far as the Warriors' offense goes, too, there were just a couple of moments where it seemed like they were being fancy. Iguodala, the one moment that sticks out clearly to me, Iguodala on that one fast break, he's got, I think, Livingston behind him, but Livingston's a little too far behind him, and Iguodala kind of tries to lay it right behind his back. For Livingston, they swatted it away, turnover. Things like that must drive Steve Kerr up the wall, across the ceiling, and down the other wall. You can't do that just because you're up 3-1. And you're at home, you can't afford to lose those opportunities. You can't just lose a fast break because you want to do something behind the back. I think that's something Draymond doesn't do. Draymond doesn't do that.
Draymond sometimes dribbles out of control, but you're right. He doesn't usually make passes like that.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean the Warriors play confident. They kind of freewheel a bit, but
That's true. That's their style.
You
of
have
play,
to take
kind
better.
of.
You have to take better care of the ball. Again,
Yeah.
I'll say the defense to me was the biggest takeaway. They kind of reverted to some of the shaky defense that we saw against Portland and against even Houston. It's a little bit some chinks in the armor when they're not playing their best on the defensive end. It hurts them. It hurts them on both ends of the floor. I think it drains them. You wanted to talk about death lineups a little bit, or the death lineup.
Yeah.
And then the other small ball lineup that the Warriors threw out there. What did you want to cover there?
Well, I think it's just interesting to talk about because we wondered, well, what does Kerr do now that we're in Game 5? We don't have Draymond. Who does he put out there? Does he put out there some sort of death lineup? You mentioned to me a proposal for the death lineup, and you were very accurate in who they put out there. They put out Iguodala, Livingston, Curry, Thompson, and Barnes. And that was
it's a super small. It's not the death lineup because the death lineup needs Green, but it's a super small ball lineup.
It's a super small ball lineup. You know, Kerr's been doing some weird things in these series. He's kind of had to because of Draymond's absence, and now because of Bogut's absence, he'll have to again. We'll get to that later. But also just the fact that McAdoo's been out there so much has kind of thrown everybody, you know. But I think the death lineup, or not the death lineup, the small lineup that the Warriors put out in Game 5 didn't work. It just didn't.
No, it's tough. That lineup, John Schumann of NBA.com, before Game 5, had noted how that lineup, that small ball lineup that they did end up throwing out there for a little bit, they played less than 5 minutes together all year.
Yeah.
So, on the one hand, yes, it didn't work, but it's partially because they hadn't played together. There wasn't a real sense of exactly where everyone's supposed to be in every scenario. When the ball gets swung over here, where does so and so cut? Who pops up to the high post? Who fades to the corner? All those little nuances. All of a sudden, you're going to throw that in the NBA Finals.
Yeah.
Against a Cavaliers team that's picked up steam and playing respectably defensively the last game or two.
Yeah, I really feel like if they had all stepped up and everybody in that small lineup, then they could have pulled through. They could have made an impact. If Barnes had stepped up, especially, I think he didn't have a good evening. Iguodala played well. Livingston played his normal self. But it seemed like on a lot of those possessions, they couldn't. Draymond, for some reason, is such a good facilitator. And when it comes down to it, he can just attack the basket whenever there's an opening that he puts the defense on their heels. And for whatever reason, without him, it seemed like Thompson was the one who had to shoulder the burden of putting up weird shots, late in the shot clock with two, or one defender all over him or maybe two people on him. And he just wasn't able to shoulder the burden that evening.
I think you hit the nail on the head talking about Green's value. I think it speaks to Green's value. And his offensive rating, when Green's at center in the finals, the first 4 games, with Green at center, their offensive rating is 124.7. They're scoring 124.7 points per 100 possessions.
Yeah.
That's terrific. Their defensive rating is 94.7. So they're surrendering 94.7 points per 100 possessions. So they're plus 30 points per 100 possessions when he's at center.
Yeah, exactly.
That's how valuable
Which
he is
is
in the death
essentially
lineup.
when they're playing the death lineup.
Yeah.
When he's playing center.
And what separates him, to me, what separates him from Barnes and Iguodala is his strength.
Yeah.
Defensively, I'm talking.
Yeah.
He is strong as an ox. And while Iguodala and Barnes are good rebounders, especially Iguodala's a good rebounder for his position, he doesn't have that brute strength and that rebounding ability that Draymond has when he's in there.
Yeah. I think Bogut's loss too is going to be kind of crucial for the Warriors going into Game 6.
Yeah, so let's talk Game 6. So they put the death lineup out there. How do you think that plays out early in Game 6?
Well, I think it comes down to the shooting of these players. I think Curry has to go into Game 6 like he went into Game 4, when everybody was calling him out for not being the MVP that he should be for the Warriors, and that the Warriors needed him to be in the finals. It's so strange in Games 1 and 2 he didn't play well. and it was Livingston, and it was Barbosa, and it was Draymond, who were really showing up. But now, and then in Game 4, obviously Curry kind of came out a little bit. Game 5, not so much again, especially late in the game, which is when you need him most. They really needed him if they were going to win Game 5 at home. I think Game 6, Curry needs to come out strong.
He needs a game like Game 4.
Yeah.
He scored a ton of points on not a crazy amount of shots. And I remember I was at a wedding rehearsal during the first half of Game 4.
Yeah.
And you texted me. You said Curry might be having a good night, and I knew immediately what that meant. It meant Curry looks like he's cooking.
Yeah.
Like he's starting to heat up, and
Yeah.
he needs to get some buckets early in Game 6 here. Get himself going. Really make that basket feel like a hula hoop.
Yeah.
And
because honestly, the player who's been playing like the MVP of the NBA this series is who? It's Kyrie Irving. Honestly. He's played so well for the Cavs, especially the past 3 games. All 3 games he scored 34, 30, and 41 in games 3, 4, and 5. He and LeBron both had 41 on Monday night. And that's what the Warriors need out of Curry. We keep talking from the Warriors' perspective, but the Cavs have that's why they've won games 3 and game 5 is because Kyrie has really come out. I think after game 2, when we did our podcast, I talked about how the person I felt the worst for was Kyrie, because last year the Cavs at least win game 2 with Dellavedova. Now Kyrie's there, they lose. So, who's feeling terrible? And then all of a sudden, games 3, 4, and 5, Kyrie dominates. And the Cavs win 3 and 5. So I think he's been playing so well. Now the person to feel bad for is Kevin Love.
yeah, I mean, I'm not really in the business for feeling bad for NBA players,
Yeah.
but I know what you mean. Here's my question: does Kyrie have another big game left in him? Do the Warriors make some defensive adjustments with this death lineup?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think maybe he's just been making a lot of shots, a lot of tough shots, but he's just been making all of his shots. I think Curry plays good defense. Sometimes Curry's been getting into foul trouble early, but I think Irving's just been playing around him.
I don't think Kyrie scores 40 again. And more importantly, I mean, that's kind of easy for me to say. That's an easy prediction. I mean, if he scores 40 again, great. But I think it's safe to say that he's probably not going to score 40 again. What I really don't think he's going to do is he's not going to shoot 70% from the field again.
Yeah.
That's sort of a rarity for him.
That's ridiculous.
He's shooting a better percentage from the field than Curry in these finals, and that's pretty telling. I don't think Curry has a monumental game again. I don't think it happens even at home. The Warriors are going to come with a better defensive game plan, a better defensive edge, and I think it's going to be a close game.
Yeah, let's talk for just a second about LeBron, because he had a phenomenal Game 5, obviously, too. And if we remember at the beginning of Game 5, every time he touched the ball, he was getting booed because people were, blaming him basically for Draymond's suspension. And then you mentioned, as we were just starting to watch the game, that the best version of LeBron is the villain LeBron.
Right.
And I think you were right. He really took advantage of that. He lived up to the moment.
Yeah.
And he had a phenomenal game alongside Kyrie. And just with the two of them playing as well as they did, basically they were able to topple Golden State. I think the only other person with double-digit scoring was JR with 10. But with just LeBron and Kyrie scoring over 40, they basically took over that Game 5. So can LeBron bring it again in Game 6? I think he can. I think he's kind of coming to the moment right now, and I think at home again, he's not going to have quite as big of a game in Game 6, but I think he's going to have another good game. Kyrie, I'm less sure about.
Yeah, let's get into some predictions for Game 6. Tell me how Game 6 plays out.
So I think I'm going to go with my heart on this one. And by that, I mean, I think the Cavs are going to win Game 6. Because they're going to come back home.
I wasn't expecting you to say that.
I think they're going to win. My heart, in the sense that I want to see a Game 7. I really want to see a Game 7. So I think Game 6, the Cavs come home and they win in a close one, in a dogfight. I think the Warriors are going to come out strong. Draymond wants to prove himself. And just at this point, too, the Warriors kind of want to close out this series, even in Cleveland. But I think LeBron has another big game. I'm not sure about Kyrie. Kyrie has a good game. I'm hoping Love has a decent game, too. But I think the Cavs win Game 6. I'm going to say 104 to 97. It's going to be a close game. So very similar to Game 5.
When you said
the same thing, right?
No.
Oh no.
When you said I'm picking with my heart here, I thought, oh, he's gonna pick the Warriors.
Yeah.
So
exactly.
you threw me a curveball there. Yeah. I actually think this game's going to look quite a bit like Game 4. Game 6 is going to look like a bit like Game 4.
Oh, really?
It's going to be tight. Now that LeBron has found his jump shot, I'm really not sure how this game is going to play out because I really think the Warriors are going to play much better with Green.
Mm-hmm.
I think they're going to bulk up their defense better. It's going to be a physical game, which initially I thought would play into the hands of Cleveland. But I think that Golden State can hang with them physically because Iguodala can scrap.
Yeah.
Green can scrap. If Festus Ezeli can give you just a couple good minutes, if Anderson Varejao can just get inside the Cavs' bigs' heads just a little bit,
yeah,
I think Golden State has enough. The key is going to come down to whether Curry has another game like he had in Game 4.
Yeah.
I think he has a better game than he had in Game 5.
Yeah.
I've got the Warriors winning in overtime. On the road, pulling it off, closing the series out without Bogut. I'm calling it right here. I don't feel terrific about the pick. I don't feel supremely confident about the pick. But I'm going to go Warriors. You have Cavs.
Okay.
All right.
Yeah, I think you just mentioned LeBron's jump shot and LeBron's 3. That's, I think, been shocking for everybody that he's been shooting so well from beyond the arc. I mean, he made everything. It seemed like everything he shot was going in. And, prior to this, everybody was talking about how, his mechanics on his shot were, not so good this whole, regular season and playoffs included. And then all of a sudden in Game 5 of the NBA Finals, he comes out of nowhere. And he's playing like he did last year's Finals. And I think maybe you're onto something there when you say in Game 6, he kind of assumes he can do the same thing. He doesn't. Question, though, if he doesn't do that, then maybe if Love fills in for that. Because honestly, when LeBron shoots like the way he did in Game 5, it makes Love dispensable. Because that's what Love is there for. Love is kind of there to be that stretch, to be that 3-point shooter. And when LeBron just takes the ball up and does it on his own.
Yeah, you've got LeBron, Kyrie, JR. You kind of have plenty of shooting.
Yeah, exactly. You even went to the point of mentioning, we're not going to talk about this, but do the Cavs offer Love a max contract? I mean, looking at how dispensable he kind of was in a game that the Cavs won against the Warriors in the NBA Finals. So, but that's with LeBron shooting the lights out.
That's true.
Game 6, he's at home. He could do it again. I don't know if he's going to.
Love can play better than he did in these past couple games, and I think it could happen. In Game 6, Love could have a decent game.
Yeah.
I don't think Love's going to have a great game in this series, and it's because of Draymond Green.
Yeah.
It's just a tough matchup. It's not a great matchup for him.
Yeah, he should have gone off in Game 5 with Draymond's absence, but he really didn't.
Let's talk a little bit about early MVP voting, a little early sneak peek at the MVP, because it's late enough in the series now where we can start talking about that.
Yeah.
Obviously, a lot of it depends on who plays well in Game 6, but right now, who's your MVP? If Golden State wins the series, who's the MVP? If Cleveland wins the series, who's your MVP?
I think if Golden State wins the series tonight, honestly, it's a toss-up. I really have no idea. Let's say, and I honestly feel like it depends on who does well tonight. Let's say if Curry goes off tonight, I think he wins the MVP. If Thompson goes off, not tonight, I'm sorry, tomorrow night. If Curry goes off, he wins the MVP. If Thompson goes off tomorrow night, I think he wins the MVP. Honestly, that's how I see it. even if Draymond has an incredible night, even with a suspension in Game 5, I can see him winning the MVP here in Game 6. And then I think on the Cavs end, I think if they win Game 6 and 7 and Kyrie plays the way he's been playing, he doesn't need to score 40 points. But if he scores 30s, I think he wins MVP. I honestly think that he wins out over LeBron. I mean, that one's a toss-up because both of them have been playing really well. But I think the way he's been playing, especially games 3, 4, and 5, after, they lose the first two, I think he really came out and he's been the most valuable player, I think, for the Cavs.
I know you said it depends on Game 6 and 7. It does. If the series ended today, I'm going to look at it from a little bit of a different perspective. So far, I think LeBron's been the MVP for the Cavs. Kyrie's had a couple of shaky games, especially early game 2 particularly. LeBron really hasn't had a stinker, and he's had a couple phenomenal games. He hasn't had any fewer than 6 assists in any of these 5 games. He hasn't had any fewer than 8 rebounds, and he hasn't had any fewer than 19 points.
Yeah.
It's incredible what he does, and as a triple threat.
Yeah. Drive,
shoot, pass, and then he also has amped up his defense later in the series, in the last couple of games. The first couple of games in the series, his defense really was, what's the word I'm looking for? Detrimental to Cleveland's attack. He's amped that up a little bit, and then the overall production on the offensive end has just been astounding. 32 points, 11 rebounds, 6 assists in Game 3, 25 points, 13 rebounds, 9 assists in Game 4, and then 41 points, 16 rebounds, 7 assists, 3 blocks, 3 steals in Game 5. So far, he's my front runner for MVP for the Cavs.
Yeah.
For MVP for the Warriors, I'm with you. It's really up in the air because all 3 of the Warriors' big 3 have had a couple of bad games. They've all had up and down finals production wise. Iguodala could be a dark horse if he finishes the series strong, just because of what he brings.
Yeah.
But there really isn't a favorite. And if I had to guess,
2 years in a row for Iguodala, huh?
Yeah, wouldn't that be something? And maybe this is a conversation for another day. But do you take much stock in Curry not really leading the Warriors in the finals? There's been a lot of talk about what does it mean for his legacy, because he's played well in the regular season but hasn't really carried the team, especially in the finals. If he doesn't win finals MVP again, what's your take on that?
Yeah, I don't know. That is interesting to know because he does so well during the regular season. He makes such clutch shots during the playoffs, but in the finals it seems like he only comes out every once in a while. And then other games, he's just off. I think that's just kind of the nature of who he is as a three-point shooter and how defenses kind of are drawn to him like a magnet. If they're going to shut down anybody, it's going to be Curry, basically. When they think about the Warriors' attack, they'll let the rest of the team beat them. In fact, that's what Tyronn Lue said in games 1 and 2. He said, we're going to cover Thompson and Curry, and if the rest of the team plays well, we're going to have to deal with that. But right now we're going to shut down Thompson and Curry. But yeah, I think there is something there. I think when you talk about his legacy, that's why it would be so beneficial for him to really come out big in Game 6, to have a big game to help his team, because especially if they lose. If they lose, I think some of the blame really does fall to him. Especially on Monday night, late in the game, he did not come through. Missed a lot of shots late in the game. A lot of threes late in the game. In games 3, 4, and 5, the team with a better 3-point percentage has won the game. And especially in Game 5, you could just see that. In the second half, the Cavs were still clicking and the Warriors were off, and especially Curry. So, yeah, I think there is something to that.
I put less stock in it, or put less value in the MVP thing. I do think he's viewed a little bit differently than a killer like Michael Jordan or a killer like Shaq or Kobe.
Mm-hmm.
However, However, I look at a team like the San Antonio Spurs and look at a star like Tim Duncan, or maybe that's not the best analogy, but it's not like Duncan was the MVP every time the Spurs won the title.
No.
There were other guys who stepped up, but again, that's sort of he's later in his career.
Yeah.
I don't put a ton of stock in it, especially as long as they're winning championships and he's the best player on the team.
Yeah, after games 1 and 2, when you saw that the Warriors had won, I think Curry was kind of, if I'm not playing well, but the rest of the team is going off, as long as we're winning the game, that's, his attitude has to be one of, I'll take the back seat as long as we're winning. But as long as they're losing, he has to step up because he is the leader of the team. Yeah.
So we did our predictions. We talked about our early MVP voting. Let's finish up with I'm going to throw you a little curveball here.
Mm-hmm.
We didn't go over this in our pre-podcast notes,
uh-huh.
but give us something. Give me something that you want me to look for in Game 6, and not a star, not LeBron, not Curry, not Kyrie, not Clay, not Draymond. Who's one player or one thing that you want to keep an eye on during the game? A little peripheral thing that could influence the game a little bit.
Well, I think in Game 6, maybe this isn't what you're looking for, but with Bogut's absence, I think if you look at the Cavs, Thompson has to dominate down low when he can. He has to be, and honestly, he's been doing that. He's been playing really well. He's been rebounding really well. He's even in some moments he's been scoring well, which he does. I think there was the one moment in Game 5 when they had Warriors had the small lineup in. They gave it to Thompson down low, and he had like 3 guys on him, but he was like, "I'm gonna make this shot because I'm the biggest guy right here," and he did. Yeah. And I think he needs to play like that again in Game 6 because the only person who can cover him will really be Draymond. Unless they put in McAdoo or they put in Spates or they put in Varejao every once in a while. But when he has that opportunity to dominate down low, he has to.
I think that's a really good point. All eyes are going to be on Kyrie and LeBron after their big games in Game 5. All eyes are going to be on Kevin Love. Can he actually show up? But Thompson might be the deciding factor if Thompson can have his way underneath.
Yeah.
I would say for me, one peripheral thing to look at is, again, this is also talking about big men, whether or not the Warriors centers can step up. How does Ezeli play in the 6, 7, 8, 10 minutes that they have him in there? How does Varejao, I can't even believe that Varejao's playing in these finals.
I know.
How does he play in the 4 to 6 minutes? That could give the Warriors that little boost they need to put them over the hump on the road.
Didn't Varejao go like 0 for 4 on free throws? I mean, little things like that can be crucial.
And Maurice Spates, he was a hot mess.
He
was a clown show.
Spates was fun to watch.
Yeah, he was fun, and not if you're a Warriors fan.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think if you don't have anything else, I think we'll wrap it up with that. We'll see how Game 6 plays out, and hopefully we'll have another podcast on the other side to maybe talk about a Game 7.
Yeah.
So we'll catch you guys on the other side.
See you guys.